Well, we did it twice, but the take that is the episode you have, it was a 7.5 hour conversation, and we recorded it in person with two mics where the sound bleeds over onto both mics. So I had to mute every word I said off his mic, and I had to mute every word that he said off my mic. So that takes however many hours you would think it would take.
Hello there, and welcome back to The Disconnected. I'm here with one of my modern, not to talk him up too much, but like one of my modern heroes, Bill Ackerman of pretty much everything lately.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you to say.
Sincerely, we'll get into supporting characters in a minute, but it is kind of a formidable show for me. And for anybody that has listened to it and listened to what I've tried to do over the last year, I hope that there's even a modicum of a parallel, because everything that you've accomplished is something that I try to hold myself to, and it's been just a beautiful ride to watch.
That's the best feedback I've ever gotten. Thank you. Yeah, no, I hope that it, I hope that people enjoy it, and that if people can take some kind of inspiration to do something like what you're doing, that's great. That's all you could really hope for.
It genuinely is this journey that you can meet so many different colorful people behind, and when it's something called supporting characters, it truly lends itself to exactly what this industry is. So I guess we're here. Do you want to share what supporting characters is for everybody?
Yeah. Supporting characters is my conversations with people that took their love of film into some kind of project or vocation, usually outside of filmmaking itself. People that write about film, people that program film, people that work in home video labels and do the extra features, people that, just any aspect of film culture that comes from a place of cinephilia, I think is probably the remit. Although, I've had exceptions like Mink Stoll that I just wanted to have a John Waters actress on the show. Right. But otherwise, it's a whole variety. Some people that know your show would probably recognize, like Sam Deegan and Kat Ellinger, Jonathan Hertzberg, Lee Gambin, I think, has been on your show. Joe Ziemba has been on your show. So a couple of people like that, and film critics, and just I don't know. It was originally a way to just promote my friends. That was what I started it doing, and then I just kind of progressed from there with reaching out to people that I was a fan of, and
right.
It's been a really interesting ride with that. I haven't done it since August of last year, but I will bring it back at some point when I can.
Thank goodness. I have been itching. Yeah, it is. It's one of those things that when it disappears for a few weeks, even at a time, you're like, all right, when's the next one? Come on.
Yeah, I got a review from someone in England that said that even the long breaks that the show takes are somehow nice, because it's such a nice surprise when it comes back. I'm like, that's the ideal listener. When the long pauses I take are endearing, I know that I found my audience.
That's a true fan.
Yeah, well, they take a long time to do. Right. Usually when I retire a season, it's because I've just reached a breaking point where I just can't handle it anymore, because I've spent 24 hours on an episode putting it all together from start to finish, and then it's like, enough, and last year was one of the craziest years of my life, and so after the last one I did, I just needed to kind of catch my bearings.
Of course.
But we can talk about any of it.
Absolutely. First off, an episode taking 24 hours. How much are you putting into that, and why is it 24 hours with some of these people?
So an example of one that took a really long time would have been Chris Bajali, who I interviewed for, I think, well, we did it twice, but the take that is the episode you have, it was a 7.5 hour conversation, and we recorded it in person with two mics where the sound bleeds over onto both mics. So I had to mute every word I said off his mic, and I had to mute every word that he said off my mic. So that takes however many hours you would think it would take. A lot, because I'm doing it manually. Right. Then I have to decide, I'm not going to release a 7.5 hour episode with anybody. I mean, maybe if Martin Scorsese comes on the show, I'll put the whole 7.5 hours. But otherwise, I'm assuming that people don't want to hear that long a conversation. So then I'm just trying to whittle it down as much as I can. I go through every sentence. I remove every verbal tick that I can. I go through everything that I can remove to shape it down. So it went to like, I don't know, what is that, like 4.5 hours? So that's 3 hours that I just pruned sentence by sentence to get it down. That's an extreme case, but I really fuss over them because it's like once it's out there, I want it to be as good as it can be. So that's why I'm a little bit, ridiculous with it, I guess.
Well, and that's what lends to the podcast medium so well, because you can genuinely take away a verbal tick that you can't really do through a visual medium like this. There's so many things that I have to refrain from doing and force myself to basically mask myself from, sitting here ticking something or getting tired halfway through and needing just a moment. It is so hard to be able to force yourself to doing that, especially when you're somebody like me who has pretty rough ADHD sometimes. But it's a nice way to contain that, actually, and get it just through this shared medium with people that enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure we'll probably talk about audio commentaries, and audio commentaries, when you're trying to remove verbal tics from that, every one that you remove, it's like you're just a little bit out of sync with the picture more. So you have to find blank space that's the same length as your verbal tick and plug it in, or just shift things around. It becomes really hard to tweak that kind of stuff unless you were doing it scripted and bit by bit, which some people do it that way. But it's impossible to do that. If you're doing that with a partner live, then you're not going to have a lot of options to do that.
Of course.
Yeah.
The supporting characters, obviously, we're not going to get into like favorites of people that you've talked to, but who do you find maybe some of the more interesting episodes for people to jump out to as first ones to listen to?
Well, I think for me, a personal favorite would be the one I did with Barry Solon, who was the owner of the video store chain that I used to work for, and he tells a lot of great stories about running an old repertory theater in Delaware, and then also running a video store chain in the Delaware and Maryland area. He, if you've seen the movie Serial Mom, the video store that is in that is one of his old stores. But that's a pretty endearing one. Ashley West, who did the Rialto Report, or does the Rialto Report podcast, is a pretty interesting one. Molly Haskell, Danny Perry. There's so many. I mean, it's very hard for me to pick that kind of stuff because, I mean, something like Amanda Reyes. I mean, you're hearing me make a friend that I work with all the time. That's the first time we ever spoke was on that. Alexander Helen Nicholas, same kind of thing. There's. I mean, I would say that if you recognize any names on the list of guests that I've had, start there, and if you like it, hopefully check out more. But I mean, I've done over 60 of them now, and it's like Stephen Thrower was one that was that's
a big one.
That was a big one for me. Tim Lucas was one that was a big one for me. Mike White from Projection Booth, Kat Ellinger, Kayla Janice was a really big one for me. I mean, there's just a lot. I if I start naming them all off, I'm sure I'll forget some important ones. It started with Sam Deegan.
Yeah. Well, you just took the words out of my mouth. Not to make it all about the same people that I talk about all the time, because I've got my own favorites. But Sam Deegan seems to be the one for me that it really brings the essence of what supporting characters is. It dove into her as a person in ways that she's not gotten into in many other places.
Well, Sam Deegan is one of the reasons I started the show, because when I had the idea to do the show, it was really to promote Sam Deegan, Heather Drain, and Travis Crawford, and maybe one or two other people. Like that, it was really just like, I have these friends, they're cool, they do cool things. Let me just do a show about them. And then Daniel Bird was in town, and so I had Sam's first interview in the can, and then we're both fans of Daniel Bird and all of his work with Borovchik and Zhukovsky, and so we went up and recorded him. And Sam is you can actually hear her cough in the background of his episode. She's in the room. And then when it was over, she's like, "That was great. We're redoing mine." So I had to I redid hers in my kitchen. And then, in a way, that was kind of where supporting characters really starts finding, I still was kind of figuring out what I was even doing with those early episodes. I didn't really know what the format was, but I was really happy with that one. And then, Sam's great. We're going to record again soon, actually, for a thing I'm doing on Godard. But and we just did one on Ken Russell for Directors Club too. So yeah, Sam's the best, and it's been kind of amazing to see how she's really kind of taken off since when I interviewed her, when she really didn't have like all these books and commentaries and things on her resume. It was really just the blog and some zines that she had done. I don't think she'd even done the symptoms booklet when I interviewed her.
Yeah, that makes sense. And now, anytime that there's a release with her on a commentary, I'm announcing it on my show on Thursday nights, and people immediately are like, "I'm buying this just because Sam's on it." And to have that sort of a reputation in 2023 is so great for some of these people, especially the ones that 5 years ago, and this is not really a knock on the industry, but 5 years ago, it was not this big, open, diverse plate that it is at the moment. And
no, I would agree. Yeah,
it's been like Heather Drain taking off, and Kat Ellinger, owning everything, and Sam Deegan and everybody else that has just been so lovely to see explode in popularity. It's been nice to see some doors open. Yeah,
and I've had a lot of people on the show that have gone into home video supplements, and like Abraham Castillo Flores is one of the most recent ones to make that jump. But like Rachel Nisbet does commentaries now. Like a lot of people, Sergio Mims wasn't really doing that many when I met him, and he got to do a whole lot. Mike McPadden got to do a whole lot. It's always great. I've always, anytime you hear me talking to anyone, if you like hearing the sound of their voice, you want to hear them talk about films on those commentaries. And so, I have definitely tried to champion everybody that has been on the show that would want to do that kind of work. I would love to hear Elric Kane do them. I would love to hear a lot of people that don't do them for whatever reason, get into that. But it's definitely gratifying, and certainly, to see some of the people that have been on the show get to really explode into that field has been terrific.
And obviously the field is wide open nowadays compared to what it used to be in home video. With all these releases coming out, it's kind of hard not to see something that needs a release coming out every single day.
Yeah, no, it's actually impossible to keep up with all of it. Unfortunately, it's just we're definitely in a golden age, but you'd have to be very wealthy and have nothing but time to absorb even half of it, I think.
I would agree there. Not to take this out of order from what I had planned, but you've brought up a couple of the names I was going to bring up. We got Travis Crawford and Sergio Mims, two people that you had spoken with, had worked with in virtual different ways, and then on top of that, you mentioned both of them in your year-end wrap-up, and it would be a perfect time just to discuss like what, especially Travis, but both of them meant to you, and how much they've really affected the scene, because they don't get. Obviously, it's sad that they didn't get the attention while they were here, but the best thing that we can do is honor their legacy in any way possible.
Yeah, well, Travis was one of my closest friends, and he's how I got into home video supplements, because the first thing I was involved with was the Phantasm box set from Arrow, and that was a case where he passed along something I wrote that had been unpublished to you and Kant, and they used it for the booklet. It was me and Kim Newman all of a sudden in a booklet for Phantasm. I don't know how that happened. And then Hell in the Pacific was my first commentary, and that was because somebody at Kino Lorber heard him on a podcast, and it would have been either my show or the projection booth that I kind of pushed him on mic to talk about Hard to Be a God, because I knew that he would be great on it. So one of those two things is what got him on the commentary beat. And so when he got the first gig, that was Hell in the Pacific, and so I joined him on that. And we didn't really do that many of them together, but we did do a couple. And But he was somebody that, what to say about him? I mean, I did a little mini episode on him. He was somebody that was a film programmer. He did the Danger After Dark series in Philadelphia really before I knew him. When I met him, he was kind of bringing his taste and expertise to the artsploitation films label,
Right.
and turned that into a real interesting label for a minute. And then, I mean, he was doing really great work with the George Romero commentaries, and just so many things like the Shaw Brothers things that have just been coming out. I haven't had a chance to listen to them all. It's actually very bittersweet to hear him on commentaries now.
Right.
But and we have one more for one of my favorite films in the can from before he passed away that I hope it will come out at some point. I can't give you any hints, but it's a good one. So hopefully it'll come out this year. It was recorded sometime early last year, I guess.
Wow.
But he was somebody that meant a lot to me, and it's kind of changed my relationship with film culture a little bit not to have him around to talk about it all with. But yeah, I mean, I was definitely lucky to know him for the years that I did, and I think that the work he did do will hold up. I mean, the home video work, there's not as much as some of the people that you've had on the show, but he did a fair amount in the years that he was doing it. And Sergio Mims, I only really talked to Sergio on the podcast that one day, but we kept touch after that. I mean, he was somebody that was the biggest cheerleader for anybody that, if you were like on his team, like he was the person that would post reviews that he read of your stuff on your wall. Like before you even got to it, he's like, isn't this great? They love your commentary, or they love this. He was such a big proponent of everybody. And he was so genuine in his love of film. He was real passionate. I know when I did supporting characters with him, I actually have about 90 minutes of deleted scenes from that episode, because you give Sergio any topic and he will just run and run and run. Like if I to ask him, like, what are some influential films? He'll give me 15 minutes on each of the 5 that first come to his head. And I'm like, okay, well, this is too much about the Wild Bunch. I really have to lose some of this stuff. So I actually could probably put together a redux version of his episode. Maybe I will, because I have a lot of good stuff. I think when I do those interviews, if it gets too far from the guest, I usually start looking for ways to cut it down, because I care more about them than necessarily like breaking down the films. But he was a sweetheart, and it was the same as with Mike McPadden. Like in the last couple of years that they were around, they did so much stuff. It was really, it's kind of inspiring, because it's like they really left so much for you to take in and take on. I mean, is very Fassbinder of them in that way, I guess. It's just like you just have a whole stack of things to catch up with still.
Right.
But I mean, it definitely was heartening in both cases to see, people writing about them online and such. I mean, especially Sergio. I mean, I thought that award the other week, and the award that went to Kayla as well, I thought that was just a sweet thing, because he would have just not known what to do.
That means a lot. I'm glad that you agree that it was meaningful for him, because it was such a unique thing for me, because I personally never got to talk to Sergio, sadly. There were some of the things that I'd heard from him through some of the Vinegar Syndrome releases that he had a hand in early on, and it was something that, one of those people that, God, I wish I could meet him one day or something, just to listen to him muse on something for 20 minutes. I feel like that would make my month. And when last year I had recorded with Nathaniel Thompson, and we had discussed something about Sergio, and because of the nature of how everything was, that episode wasn't going to go up for about 3 weeks. And in the interim is when Sergio passed. And I immediately went, well, we just discussed him. We have to get this up like right now, or it's going to be a little weird. So I did that little intro, but then it laid so heavy on me the rest of the year. It was like, I mean, what else can we do for Sergio? There's something here that not enough people know this name. And so I felt like that was just a good way to get the name out in the ether and get a little more attention out there.
Yeah, no, it was a great gesture. I mean, I'm sure he would have appreciated that. I think, yeah, I mean, he was only kind of growing as far as like name
Right.
recognition towards the end. I mean, when I interviewed him, he was like, "I would love to work for Kino. I'd love to work for Kino." Months later, he's on a ton of Kino releases.
Yeah.
And it was. I mean, he was on Indicator releases. He was on Vinegar Syndrome. He was on Arrow. I would have loved for him to crack the Criterion Code, especially with like their increased focus on black film. He would have been perfect for them. But yeah, I mean, we're just lucky to have what we have.
That's true. And now there's, like you said, there's just so much to consume. There's so much. I mean, look at everything Mike McPadden left behind, Travis Crawford.
Yeah.
A lot of his stuff is behind the scenes, obviously, but the stuff that he did leave that was a little more forefront to everybody's attention, there's still a lot there. And then Sergio, my gosh, Sergio is just prolific in a lot of the things that he discussed for so long. I love it.
Yeah, no, he's great. I mean, I love the. Did you ever hear the track he did for Moment by Moment, the Lily Tomlin movie with Travolta? It's Kino Lorber. It's Lee Gambin, Sergio Mims, and oh god, it's gonna kill me. What is her name? Smuckler. Her name. The woman that wrote the book on 70s women directors. But I her name's on the tip of my tongue. But that's a fun one if you're looking to catch Sergio and Lee in the same conversation on a track. It's good stuff.
That's got to be interesting. I mean, Leon himself is a very big character.
Yes. Yeah, Lee's the best.
I love Lee. All right, so you brought up the Directors Club. Let's break that one down, because this one's been getting a little more attention from you than Supporting Characters, it seems like.
Yeah, well, what happened was Directors Club was the first podcast I was ever on. It was the first podcast that invited me to do anything. And so they've been friends of mine for a long time. And Jim Laskowski, who is the co-founder of that show, he was the one that invited me to do Supporting Characters because it's his network, the Now Playing Network. But I think last year he was really starting to face burnout. He's been doing that show for so many years, and it's a lot of work. So he was talking about maybe backing away from it. I'm like, well, look, if it will help, I can take every other month on, and do Directors. And little did I realize when I took that on, it just takes up all the time that I have that's not on home video stuff. So Supporting Characters really kind of took the back seat as I've been doing these Directors Club episodes. But it's been fun. I mean, I did one on Stephen Sadian with Heather Drain and Justine Smith that was fun. And I'm working on a really crazy epic one right now on Jean-Luc Godard. I think will be out in March. But yeah, it's been... I mean, that's been the show that I've been on the most as a guest. So it felt like only appropriate to...
Makes sense.
Yeah, to take it on a little bit. But I will try to get back to my own show at some point.
That name, by the way, Maya Montañez Smuckler.
That's it. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and her book is great, and that commentary is definitely worth a listen. And the film is actually better than its reputation, too, because that film had, like, the worst reputation for years. But it's actually pretty interesting.
I am going to have to check it out. For the channel, we have a Discord, and every month we do a watch along. We watch a movie together, and we watched Blowout together last night. And
well, it's not as good as Blowout.
Well, just getting on the Travolta train. Most people that were in there had never seen Blowout, so it was this wonderful revelatory period for these people that were just, oh my God, De Palma's kind of amazing. Like, yeah, I've been trying to tell you.
That's one that I saw for the first time in college at midnight on the big screen, and it was before DVD. So it was like, I'd never seen a De Palma like from that period in widescreen before. So it was like, A, one of his best films, and B, just to see like, oh, he's actually like a master of the scope frame, because I'd never seen any of those films in the proper aspect ratio back in the mid 90s. But yeah, no, it's a great, I mean, Blowout. I would hope that, people would know it, but yeah, that's a great one.
It's Blowout. You got to know Blowout at this point.
Yeah, I would hope so.
So Directors Club, it's really good for the stuff that I've been able to listen to. I think it's one that the people that are, kind of like I just mentioned, actually, when you're looking at somebody like De Palma and you really want to dive deep and learn how to start, how to continue, how to ingest the work of somebody in a way that is more meaningful, it's a really great companion piece to some of those. And
Yeah.
we don't have a lot of those that focus on a specific director kind of from start to finish in a lot of ways that isn't, I don't know, less critical. There's so many times that you can be honest about the films and just share these ones are objectively good for these reasons, and other ones, we'll shine a little less attention on. But
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely have fun doing those kind of long form critical.
Yeah.
I'm a major auteurist kind of in terms of how I look at film is through the director medium. So yeah, it's totally tailor made for me. I was a listener for many years before I was ever on the show. So
right,
yeah.
It's good stuff, though, and I highly recommend it. It is one that people will... the best thing, just look up a director that you are either into or at least interested in, and then just dive deep. It is such a really great way to start into that.
Absolutely.
You mentioned audio commentaries. Let's dive into that, because you have done a handful lately, and I've got two that have gotten a little bit of attention recently.
Yes.
I believe both of these were nominated for the Shell Shock Rewind Awards. Both didn't quite get on the list, but they both got multiple votes, and Natural Enemies especially, one that, that film hit hard for me this year, and a lot of people in our Discord loved that movie.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I was just messaging with Jonathan Hertzberg about 5 minutes before I got on this call here, and I told him I'm probably gonna be talking up Natural Enemies, But that was, one of my favorites to work on. I thought it's been so heartening to see how people have responded to that film and that release. Right. When I was working on it, I'm like, are people going to get this? I really wasn't sure. Honestly, if you had asked me in advance, I probably would have predicted that Heartbreakers would have had the bigger impact because it's a little more, light compared to most films are light compared to Natural Enemies. But yeah, people have really taken to that one, and I'll just say that Fun City Editions is a real labor of love project for like a true blue cinephile. So it's like I'm always rooting for every release, whether or not I'm not involved with like most of them. I'm only involved with the three, but every single one I cheer on just as much as any of the ones that I am involved with. It's from Alphabet City up through Party Girl. It's just like that guy's got no bad films on the resume.
I would agree there. Jonathan, though, you've got like this pretty momentous history with him. It seems like, because you've talked to him a lot, you've worked with him a few times. What is the background there?
So the background there was I went to be interviewed for Brian Sauer's documentary on Danny Perry.
Nice.
Which I know Brian's been working on that for a long time. I hope one day we can all see it. I know it's going to be great when it's done, but I know he's got a million other irons in the fire. But when so I went up there to New York, and it was he was doing interviews in the Kino Lorber offices where Jonathan was working. And so while I was waiting for my turn to be on camera, we just talked. And I remember we were talking about like campus film society kind of things he did when he was younger. And it just left an impression like, oh, that guy was interesting. And then when he was putting Fun City Editions together, he reached out to me for the booklet for Jeremy. And so I think Brian Sauer might have put him on to me for that. And that was a good relationship. And then I thought, well, hell, let's help get the word out about your label. So when I was putting that season together, I did an interview with him. We talked for at least 6 hours. I have the full recording somewhere. We talked for a long time, about things that couldn't get in the episode, like about Jeremy, because he didn't want to have anything about, unannounced titles. Right. So couldn't leave any of that in. But, and then, he actually is who got me my first solo commentary, the People Next Door for Scorpion, Kino Lorber, and then Natural Enemies, which was really happy experience. And Heartbreakers, I think, was something that Chris O'Neill really kind of brought to him. And then when Chris was preparing to do that commentary, he was like, you want to join me on that? I'm like, sure. So that's how I wound up involved with Heartbreakers. And then I have some other other assignments for Mr. Hertzberg in the future, which are for amazing films, but I cannot say anything more about it, and it won't be for a while that they come out. But he's great. I mean, he let me crash at his place during the New York Film Festival, so I feel
nice.
like if I ever have a firstborn, I owe it to him somehow. But he's the best.
Yeah, Natural Enemies is one that it hits hard, and I could tell why listening to the two commentaries, why that one would be more impactful on people. I'm just glad that people are seeing that it's resonating, because there's so many people in this community that they don't give a time to the special features, or they don't even let on that they do. But there's something about the ones that stick out, like Natural Enemies, that people can just go, oh my gosh, have you heard the commentary on this? And this was one of those ones. And like you said, like Heartbreakers, it feels a little more like a pop music type of film. And so I can see why that one would be more that people would gravitate towards. But for the ones that are taking the time for Natural Enemies, this is a special movie.
I completely agree. I mean, that one, I can remember just doing so much. Like I read a bunch of of Horowitz's books. The guy that wrote the original novel for Natural Enemies. I actually spoke to his son. I spoke to Jeff Canoe. I spoke to the woman that played the Madam. She couldn't remember a thing about that movie. I talked to a couple people up for that. I tried to find the DP, but I guess he had passed away. But the research of that was fun. I mean, I don't know. Commentaries are a funny business when you're doing the solo thing, because it's like, if you didn't actually work on the movie, to be able to like speak about it for 90 minutes to 2 hours or whatever, it's like, what are you going to bring instead if not your own experience making it? And so people have all different strategies for how to fill that time. I mean, some people are all history, some people are all analysis, some people like to do a blend. I think I like to do a blend, but I don't know. It's a different kind of set of challenges than to do one with a partner, where you really can bounce off of somebody and develop some kind of conversation. That's really not an option with the solo tracks. But you also can micromanage it all in a way that you really can't as easily. Even if you give your partner a script, there's only so much you can really follow it if you're trying to engage with what's on screen.
Of course.
But I don't know. I mean, both are pleasant. I mean, I think I have just as much fun working with Amanda Reyes, the joint commentaries that we've done as the solo ones. But I don't know. I mean, I'm really happy that Natural Enemies, if anyone liked it, because I thought, oh man, this is going to be on Fun City Editions. People are going to actually hear this thing.
Right.
I don't want to let them down. So it's definitely like high pressure. But
I think you succeeded. They are they've been wonderful so far, and I mean that leads perfectly. With how long you're speaking in interviews, with how long you're able to carry on yourself on some of these, you obviously research like crazy. So with something like Natural Enemies, obviously you talk to a handful of people. What else is the preparation process like for you?
It depends on the film. I mean, like. The People Next Door was the one I did the most intense prep for, because that one was right at the beginning of the pandemic, and so I had nothing but time. And I actually got into two different archives for that one, so I got all the papers from the producer and the writer. So I had the call sheets. Like I had like everything like behind the scenes, and I tracked down the lead actress, and I tracked down the guy that played in the band in the party scene. Like I did interviews, and I had like access to all sorts of documentation, which I've not really had that level of access on anything since. Natural Enemies, I couldn't get access to the script. I had written to the archive that had it, and it was like the pandemic restrictions were such that they couldn't go to where they had the script. So I reached out to Jeff Canoe. I talked to Jeff Canoe, who didn't even know that Natural Enemies was in the works yet. I actually got to him before Jonathan did, which could have backfired, but it worked out okay. And I just, all I did was I went through every scene. I looked at each scene, and I thought, well, what can I read up on that would beef up my insights into this? And I mean, Hal Holbrook, I'd done a little bit of reading up on with The People Next Door. Louise Fletcher, I can't remember what. I mean, I did reach out to her assistant, but I never heard back. And, obviously, like, she's since passed away, and I don't know what, like, kind of health she was in when I tried to get her. I'm like, this is crazy for me to try to get to Louise Fletcher, but, it doesn't hurt to ask. Yeah, it just depends. Something like Last House on the Left, I think we had a month maybe to prepare for that, but it was a film I knew by heart. I had been reading about it forever, and so that was a case where I got it by accident, really, because I guessed that Arrow were working on it because they had a deal with MGM, and I saw Richard Harlan Smith musing on Twitter about, like, should I commit to this Last House on the Left? Do I want that in my head? And I'm like, oh, well, that tells me something. So I'd reached out to the producer of that disc, and I'm like, hey, I've been talking to this guy that does the reality report. It would be interesting if you talk to him about the adult film connections to Last House. And so all I was doing was trying to set up an extra for them, which didn't end up happening. And that's probably not that surprising that MGM wouldn't even be that crazy about something like that. But just in talking to the producer, it turns out they didn't have a commentary for it. And I'm like, well, I could do something for you. And they're like, well, we need it quickly. I'm like, I can do it quickly. It's like, you got to be cheap. I can do it cheap. So I flew to Texas and we did it. And, that was still kind of the biggest thrill for me because that's one of my favorite films and I just couldn't believe it. But but that was not a case where I did any interviews with anyone involved with the film. And, we only just had so much time to do research. But yeah. Sometimes people don't have that much time.
It's true.
I won't tell which person it is because I don't want you to listen to the track listening for this. But one person I know had 1 week to prepare a commentary on a film, and they did it, and they did a good job with it. But it's like 1 week is not very much to do that kind of work, especially if you have a day job. So
well. And he's said it on here, so I don't mind repeating it. But Frank Jang, who does a lot of the Asian releases, he's told me, like, I got notified one time that 3 days before he needed to record, do you want this now? And it's like, sure, I'll take it. But oh my gosh, let's step into third gear now.
Yeah. Even if it was Blue Velvet, which is a film I know pretty well, and I've interviewed people involved with Blue Velvet, 3 days would be frightening to do that. And that's probably the film I know best that I haven't been asked to do anything with. But 3 days is crazy, but not out of line. People have asked for something. Usually I get like a month to 2 months is what I've been told. The things I'm working on for Jonathan in the future are the first time I've really had a lot of time. Like even the Al Adamson book that Amanda and I wrote for Severin, which was a ton of work. I think we had 2 months for that, maybe. And that was, writing full essays for every film and more that he ever did. But yeah, I don't know. It's a fun challenge, but it is a challenge.
Definitely. I could see that, especially for somebody like Adamson. There's so much to, you turn over a rock and 5 things scattered that you can just discover so many different branches go down off of that tree. It's a lot.
Yeah, well, I've got Adamson news to announce in the future, but I can't yet.
Interesting. Yeah. You talked about driving down to Texas to record. That's kind of the perfect segue. What just happened? You're going to be on this amazing release of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I'm reading from you that you did this in the Texas Chainsaw House.
Yes, yeah. Kat Ellinger invited Amanda and I to do that track based on the Last House on the Left track that we had done. And obviously, we had to say yes because you only live once. But goddamn, it's kind of like the biggest horror film. In the top 5 conversation,
right, easily.
So I knew that house was a restaurant. I'd been there with my family, and so I contacted them. I'm like, hey, we could mention it on the commentary. Could we get access to that house and record the commentary in there? And they let us. And it's already an immediately dated commentary track because we used the name of the old restaurant, and it has since become, what is it now, Hooper's or something? It's like, or Toby's or Hooper's. I forget. They changed it to something that was like a reference to Toby Hooper. But it was a different was a different people running it when we did it. But yeah, we recorded it right in a little alcove area where Grandpa sits in the film, and they actually had like a dummy, like Grandpa dummy, like sitting across from us while we were recording it. Which, yeah, it was cool. I mean, definitely an intimidating project to take on, but I thought a fun challenge. I mean, it's a masterpiece of a film, and yeah, it's all downhill from here as far as like notoriety. I mean, that's the only film I've done that like my coworkers all know, because it's
right.
It's I mean, it's a household name, but
it's Texas Chainsaw.
Yes, yeah, no,
that's enough.
It was total honor to do it. I mean, I still am kind of shocked that that's something I have in my resume.
I can't wait to hear it. And on top of that, is the perfect question to ask now is with a title like that, and you kind of stole the thunder because you already mentioned Blue Velvet. I was going to say, other than Blue Velvet, what is the title that you would love to do a commentary for that would make you feel as shook as Texas Chainsaw?
I don't. That's a tough one because I don't see Blue Velvet ever entering the equation for a lot of reasons. It would probably be something that hasn't been done to death. I mean, the film that I would most love to do is Jim the World's Greatest, the Don Coscarelli film from 1976, which is a film that means a lot to me, and it's totally off the radar for most people. I think it's probably on YouTube. I don't know if anyone else will like it as much as me, but that's one I would love to do. I mean, most of my favorite films have plenty of extra features. Like, I don't think they need a commentary from me on Last Picture Show, or even Chilly Scenes of Winter is entering the Criterion Collection now. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's always so many, but I got to do Last House on the Left, since I've always kind of told myself, like, I got to do that. Like, anything else that comes along is amazing, but I'm not greedy. Like I've already kind of gotten to experience what I wanted to at least once. And the one I have coming up with Travis whenever it comes out is definitely one that would be on the list as well. All I can say is a 70s horror film. That's all I'll say. Let's Scare Jessica to Death would be one, but I mean, there's already a Kat Ellinger, and there's people that would do a better job of it than me. So, I can't. Same with a lot of them. I mean, Out of the Blue is another one I would have loved, but yeah, I don't know. The ones I have in the works are all. I'm happy with what I got.
And that's one of the reasons why I've always been able to look up to you. The amount of humility is astonishing. The work that you do, it has this wide reach that it seems like you are eager to play down, but in all reality, you have this massive place in the current pantheon that is just important.
It's kind of you to say that. I always just feel like it's a small pool of people. I know a lot of people from doing the podcast, and I feel like I've just been really lucky in a lot of cases. I mean, I do overcompensate as much as I can to like earn my place on these things when I get opportunities. Like, I don't take it for granted, but I do feel like there's been some colossal mistakes sometimes when I end up on things like Chainsaw Massacre. I'm like, how'd that happen? But yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, it's been interesting because I didn't really expect any of that. I still am always surprised anytime I'm approached to do anything. It's kind of like, what I think of my greatest skill is finding people to promote on supporting characters, and everything else is just like, I'm a movie fan, same as anyone else. I don't think of myself as like, I mean, I have engaged in film historian type work, so it's not totally out of line to say I'm a film historian when I do something like Al Adamson. Like, I am going through documents, I am interviewing the producer, like I am doing those things, but I don't know. I feel like a little pretentious to use those kind of titles sometimes. I'm just trying to do the best I can with those kind of gigs when I get them.
And this is that humility shining right through. So thank you. Let's get the spotlight off of you for just a quick second. The major last thing I wanted to talk about is there is this big piece of discourse. I don't know how often you see it or pay attention to it. there are people that are literally posting online that they don't watch anything post like 2000 or 2010, that all new film is garbage, basically.
Yeah.
And you have this sensibility that I don't see in a lot of people, is that we kind of try to champion pretty much everything as much as we possibly can. And you seem to ingest as much as humanly possible, and I don't understand how you have the time, but just wanted to have a discussion on like repertory cinema versus contemporary cinema, because with how much you watch, it's obvious that you are seeing a wide gamut of things, from, you know, modern masterpieces to probably complete drivel to some of the best of all time, where you're discussing Texas Chainsaw Massacre in the house, to everything else. Like this is something that the amount of pretension that people that are film fans are oozing nowadays, it's just off-putting to anybody that's, you know, potentially going to be getting into that hobby. So first off, why is contemporary cinema important to you?
Well, it's just it's interesting to see how film reflects the time that it's made in, and I think that's true of the films from the 70s I love. It's true of the films being made now. You know, I think that the more films you see, the more you're going to be familiar with what's been done before. You're going to spot the influences of people that are referencing other things. You're going to see a lot of things that don't hit you right away because there's no nostalgia component to it. And if it's arriving on a wave of hype, there's no discovery to it either. So you have to work harder to find the things that blow your mind if you're somebody that's been engaged in this a long time, I think. And so for me, I think, you know, there were years where I didn't pay as a close attention to new releases, because I think after, I want to say 2002 or 3, when it really felt like that post Pulp Fiction American independent boom really kind of trickled away. Maybe after, maybe Punch Drunk Love is maybe the end of it, or at least the year of 2001, like Royal Tenenbaums and Mulholland Drive and all that. Like maybe after 9/11, you know, you really start to see indie become more like Juno and Little Miss Sunshine kind of stuff, and a lot more attention paid to franchise blockbusters like Spider-Man and Harry Potter. And I kind of just tapped out a bit and got into there was plenty of older stuff to occupy my time. So I became probably closer to one of the people that, maybe not as extreme as some, but like, I wasn't making little lists of top 10 of the year or anything like that. And I think, somewhere in the mid-aughts, I started really just digging into independent genre films that were having a theatrical release that were just kind of off the beaten path a little bit, and going to film festivals for the first time, like having a little bit more money, because as a retail worker, I did not have any budget for film festivals, but working a corporate kind of job that I do now, I was able to save up my money and go to New York Film Festival. And I think just taking the time and unfortunately spending the money to have those experiences, and also the way people pass around films and links and recommendations online. I think there was just a lot of different people I was meeting that were pointing me in the direction of things that were not part of the mainstream top 10 kind of conversations. And I think that just I always struggle to bring it down to 40 favorites of each year, and but it's always lopsided, because the first half of the year I always feel like it's over, man. Like there's just nothing happening, and then around summertime, I start hearing about things. People start passing things around. By fall, award season, and everything that people think has any chance of an award consideration all comes out at once, and then it becomes like this kind of crazy thing where my friend Jim and I are always sending links back and forth, like, oh my God, have you heard about this? What about this? Here's a top 10 list. I haven't heard of that one yet. And then it becomes fun to try to find the buried treasures each year. Travis Crawford was great at this, because he never left the house, and he had links coming to him from all directions, and he was always recommending things that made my list because he just had a great eye for things that were interesting and off the beaten path. But yeah, I think, I don't know. I mean, a lot of times a film, I need to see it twice to know that I really like it, because the first time I watch it, I'm doing the comparison game with like, oh, I think it's going to do this. I think this director has done this before, or it's either failing to meet my expectations, or it's falling below my expectations. Something's going on in my head where it's like I'm a little bit outside it the first time I watch it.
Yeah.
But if I'm thinking about it, the second time I can actually watch it without all of that over analysis in my head, and I can just enjoy it for what it is, and then I know it's something I really love. And so yeah, I think that there's just always films like that every year, and but yeah, it's not always the things that are up for Oscars. It's not always the things that are making a lot of money. But I mean, and everyone's taste is different. I mean, I can't say that everyone's going to enjoy all the Hong Sang-soo stuff that I like in New York, but I mean, I love it. So this is a good time for me. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a weird time for cinema in general, because I feel like theatrical is always in danger ever since the pandemic. Right. And I don't know if everything will be streaming, and what that means if everything is going to be like a Skinamarink kind of passing around a file kind of experience, or if it's going to be, what it's going to be. If it's just going to be festivals and then streaming, I mean, it's already kind of like that for some things I see. I mean, so I don't know. I mean, and will that be good or bad? I don't know. I try to be just open-minded to technology changes, culture changes, but yeah, I mean, we won't run out of artists making interesting work. How we see it might change. But
that is a good point. And obviously when you throw in home video with all that, there's just a lot of question marks. The way that things have always been done, it's just, we're not at that stage where you can just rely on tradition, basically, because things are being shaken up daily.
Yeah. I always am surprised that since we're talking about commentaries and home video and supplements, I've always been surprised that the streaming people don't really seem to take advantage of that group to, I mean, the Criterion channel has Farron Smith-Neme and Imogen Sarah Smith and people like that, Ashley Clark, doing on-camera things. And that might be the way forward, but I think when I think of what Shudder could do or what Mubi could do, I mean, there's so much that is on the table for them to, make more interesting content that they could own it. I mean, I don't really get it, but maybe that'll happen. Maybe that's in the works. I have no idea. It's not really my world. Yeah.
I don't know if it's crossed your desk yet. Glass Onion, the second Knives Out film, just had a commentary posted by Ryan Johnson. So well, that's smart.
Then they should be doing that.
Right. And for it to be a full Netflix-owned movie, I'm curious to see, if this for some reason does well. Maybe, a couple good links gets out there on Variety or something, and there's actual insight in there. Maybe it'll light something up, and it, lights a fire under some execs, because when you get people, and hopefully you've seen it too, the amount of people that got interested in a lot of the home video stuff during the pandemic because they couldn't leave and they were, streaming fatigue and everything else that was happening. This is the exact sort of tide change that could actually bring people to a service. And if somebody comes out as leading, that could be a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love it. I think, I don't know. I mean, I just want all the people that have been on supporting characters to get work, Selfishly, that's really, or I don't know what the word would be. Philanthropic. Philanthropic was the word I was searching for. I don't know why that was not the tip of my tongue.
So we talked about modern cinema. What about repertory cinema? Because I'm sure with the amount of things that you've seen that there've been experiences you've had where films that you've seen many times, perhaps at home, and suddenly saw on the big screen for the first time just changed the way that you viewed something.
Well, I mean, the director that probably has the biggest impact on my life is David Lynch, and most of his films are better in the theater for me. And I think I first came to him through the videotape of Eraserhead, and then the one that kind of made me obsessed was the videotape of Blue Velvet. So seeing those in the theater, because when I was in college was when Lost Highway came out. And so I saw Lost Highway in 4 different theaters, and then they brought back all of his other movies to the local art house. So I got to see them all on the big screen, and it was a revelation because I'd never seen them in widescreen even, like it's, I mean, I didn't have the laser discs for those, and it's before DVD. So I didn't realize just how different it was. I mean, it's the same growing up with Halloween on television and then seeing that on the big screen. I'm like, oh, this is a totally different. I get now why he's breathing like that, because he's actually in the shot.
The scene is different.
It's different. I think, I've had a lot of good experience with repertory. Not always is it going to be revelatory, but certainly with, possession is something that comes up sometimes in recent online discourse, and that was one that all of his films played in Brooklyn several years back, and seeing those on the big screen was just like a very, very bracing experience, possession included. But I don't know. I mean, there's certainly things I rewatch a whole lot that. Like Last Picture Show or Chilly Seasons of Winter, that I have seen them on the big screen, but I haven't seen everything on the big screen that way. Messiah of Evil is one I saw that changed because that was, again, you could always see it in a bad public domain transfer, but to see it on the big screen through Exhumed in Philly was just like, oh my God, finally seeing the entire frame. It's amazing. But I think people are lucky to not grow up with these pan and scan transfers that we grew up with in the video cassette era. I mean, certainly all the Robert Altman films looked like garbage when I was growing up, and they were still amazing, even though they were just like zooming in on someone's nose and like his already wandering camera panned and scanned. It was just a nightmare. But it was like that told you just how good McCabe, Mrs. Miller, or Nashville was. You could see it in such an awful presentation and still love it.
Man, there's so many different things that I've just been, because I've got young kids, really cognizant of what is going to be different for their experience with film, and the whole pan and scan thing, and because of the age that I was when DVD started getting popular, the getting a gift from my grandma and trying to be like, this is great, and then that at night going, can I return this because this is full screen and I have to have the widescreen version.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember working at a video store during the age when that really kind of made the transition, because we had the first DVDs and we also had a lot of VHS, and we had a clientele that was kind of half and half. And when things like Armageddon would come out, which were like in scope, and it's like they would rent the DVD, be like, can we get one without the black bars? I'm like, you can get the videotape if you want, but I mean... let me give you a little lesson about what you're losing. But same with Rushmore, any of those scope films that were out in the late 90s that were new releases. It was always a fun conversation to have with somebody as to why they were wrong about the black bars. But I think even just the way movie censorship has changed, I think, with Blockbuster and the R rating theatrical thing being less and less of a factor, I don't know if films that we grew up with that were cut for the R rating and never got restored, if you'd have those quite the same way, like things like Goodfellas or Wild at Heart or Boogie Nights, big things, that they were X and then they got cut down to R and we've only known them as R. I think now it'd be very hard to imagine a big filmmaker making an X cut and you just never get to see it. Like, you just wait a couple. I mean, it almost felt like those Apatow films. They were designing them to have an unrated cut, so they could sell it. They could sell it twice. It became part of the branding or the part of the salesmanship. So, like all the censorship that people like Dario Argento and Brian De Palma went through back in the day, you would never have that now. I mean, you might have other problems. You might have less of a way to see them, or those guys might have less money to work with. Right. But yeah, there's definitely like a lot of positives that have come along since those films were being made. Even just the scholarship around what people are cutting out of things. I mean, the video watchdog generation, and the way internet kind of spreads that information. You can't mess with the film quite the same way and not have it be detected.
And we're seeing that on home video. I mean, the amount of times that people are complaining about color timing and
Oh yeah.
all of that, that's becoming more and more of a bigger deal. That's a completely other story, obviously. But yeah,
Yes.
the censorship is a big deal. Like Scream, I don't understand how we still don't have the old original cut of Scream that only came out on Laserdisc.
Yeah, I've seen that version too. It's not radically different, but yeah, I mean, because it's Disney.
Well,
That's why.
yeah, but obviously they could print a ton of money nowadays. Scream is more popular than ever, it seems like.
Yeah, sometimes these things they're more. It's more than money. I mean, ask Warner Brothers why they don't put up the Devils. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. Like sometimes it's not about money. It's about being moral. I don't know.
Right.
Like I've got no idea why they don't put out Scream. I mean, they could license it for X number of, I mean, they could license it to Arrow or Scream Factory or whoever. But I don't know. I mean, sometimes we didn't have Friday the 13th uncut forever. Right. I mean, that only came out in whatever year that came out in. And
we just got 2 or 3 of them uncut for the first time ever, I believe, right?
Oh, with the cut footage of part 2? Yeah. Well, I mean, that's like, what is that, work print footage? But yeah, I think because they don't have the sound for that stuff anymore, maybe?
Right, I think so. And My Bloody Valentine's another example of that they
just I think Happy Birthday to Me might also be like that. I don't know if that footage exists, but I mean, yeah, all those early, I mean, I think only The Burning did they actually preserve everything correctly.
Yeah.
But I don't know why some things don't come out uncut, but I mean, Wild at Heart has never come out uncut. I mean, and I think Anchor Bay tried to put that out uncut back in like the 90s, and it just never happened.
Gosh. Oh, to see a different world.
Yeah.
To see, all these things that have changed just restored would be amazing. And honestly, that should be what streaming is. We have, the accessibility and education that we have nowadays is greater than ever, and yet it's kind of in a way not, because of what we don't have is frustrating.
Well, it's funny because that is one point in the pro streaming column, is that a film like California Split, which nobody can afford the music clearances on, including Indicator, probably including Criterion, because I guess it falls under broadcasting versus home video in terms of those costs. You can put that out as a streaming thing. Same with Little Darlings, or maybe, I don't know if Looking for Mr. Goodbar falls into that. All the things that run into these music clearance problems, streaming seems to be a hurdle, that allows those films to be out there. So that's a positive. Yeah, wish we could own them, but that would be a plus. One thing at a time, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, streaming obviously answers so many problems for accessibility with the keeping this hobby alive for other people that can't afford things like home video. There's so much money that you can easily dump just into collecting Sam Deegan commentaries every single month at this point.
Oh, yeah. I've done it. Yeah. It's expensive.
Haven't we all?
Yes.
So it's nice to see the accessibility for those that are able to get it. And with even with like a library pass and getting access to Canopy, that opens up a whole new world for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always found it very strange that, I mean, I think it blew my mind when people would talk about films as being impossibly rare because they weren't streaming, like Near Dark. I'm like, is Near Dark really is that rare? But I guess for if you didn't have home video, yeah, it is rare. And same with Possession, I guess. But it's just funny what constitutes rare sometimes, because if you get into the gray market, almost everything that you want, is available in some corner of the internet. Maybe not what the label people want to hear, but you could find almost everything for free if you look hard enough. But streaming, I mean, I subscribe to like nine or 10 right now. It's stupid. I mean, but because they'll have a few things, and then I'll sign up for those things, and then I forget that I still have the subscription, and I don't have time to watch Showtime. I don't have time to watch half this stuff. But they get me on one thing, and then I just forget to cancel it. So this is how I have never owned a house.
2023 joy.
Yes.
I've been considering ending some of these with a unique question, so I'm going to throw one at you just to see what you think of it. And if it doesn't work, I'll cut it. But I'm curious what you think. Off the cuff, what film comes to mind when you think of what would personify the state you grew up in?
That's interesting. Maybe Alice, Sweet Alice, or God, it's probably Clerks, isn't it? But I don't. It's got to be a Jersey film. I mean, maybe Christmas Evil, maybe Friday the 13th. um, yeah, one of those, I guess. It makes me
Alice
think.
Sweet Alice is a great go-to title for that.
Alice Sweet Alice is shot in Patterson, which is like where my grandfather worked, and so we used to go there. And I've been to those locations. I interviewed Alfred Soul once about it. And that's definitely a film that reminds me of that part of North Jersey. So, I mean, I grew up an hour away from like the Blairstown Hope area where the Camp Novi Bosco is, where Friday the 13th was shot. I actually went to camp on the other side of the lake. So wow. Those films have a nostalgia for me, partly because I like horror films in that period, but also because they remind me of where I grew up.
Right.
Which I've done that a few times. I'm a big film locations enthusiast. I actually moved to Wilmington, North Carolina for a couple of years, partly because Blue Velvet was shot there. And so I thought, on my worst day, I'd at least be surrounded by the locations from Blue Velvet. So, that is a weird hobby to have, but it is a hobby that I have. And, Clerks reminds me very much of the guys I knew at the malls in the 90s. I mean, I heard about Clerks in a mall in the 90s. It was the most, and they had a copy of the new album Live Through This from Hole on them. It was a very 90s memory in my life. But one of those films probably is, I mean, I don't live in Jersey, but it never leaves your blood.
Of course. For those that have never done it, going to some of these filming locations, it is, like you brought up the Texas Chainsaw House and, with Blue Velvet, there's so many things that it doesn't feel like it would be that big of a deal. But if you are really close to a film, if it's really like a part of who you are, standing there it's not just rarefied ground. It's like a part of you teleports in that moment. And it's so, so unique.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think the best experiences are really kind of eerie. My favorite horror film is Let's Scare Jessica to Death. And that house still exists on a creepy old hill in Connecticut. And you go there and there's like the little no trespassing signs. It feels like you're in a wrong turn or something, like breaking the law, going, oh, what's going to happen to me? And you go up the hill and there it is. And it looks just as creepy as in the film. But then you go to like, I don't know, locations from Taxi Driver and it's like a Starbucks, because like, New York, everything's just constantly turning over. So it's like, it does not have the seedy ambiance of the Scorsese movie. But
probably still smells the same.
Probably still smells the same. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I found the house from I Spit on Your Grave. I found the house from Silent Night Bloody Night. It's a fun thing, but like sometimes it's kind of just, like any other house, it's not that interesting, but
right.
Yeah.
It's fun. Find one that means something to you.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, even if it's a film you only halfway like, I mean, Texas, I mean, I went to locations from Blood Simple and Dazed and Confused, went to that baseball diamond where the baseball game, and it's like, even if that's not like your favorite movie, like it's still kind of a cool thing. My brother and I had nachos where stuntman Mike gets the nachos in Death Proof. It's just, I don't know, it's fun. It's fun to do that. But
that's super fun.
Yeah, well, Kayla Janice and I went on a whole road trip of Canadian film locations once. When I first met her, we went to the that shack in the woods where the Brood children are kept in the Cronenberg movie, and it was so cool and creepy. And the house from Black Christmas we found, and we went to the school from prom night, and we went to the principal's office like bad kids, and we're like, can we see where the prom was? And the principal took us to the school gymnasium where the prom is in prom night. That's awesome. As we're walking there, she's like, my husband was involved with the Evil Dead musical. I'm like, this is the weirdest thing ever. I remember that, but it was, I don't know, if you can find where things are shot and you're not going to be like, getting into people's private lives in a way that's intrusive. It's a fun hobby to have.
I agree completely. Bill, thank you so much for this. This has been a wonderful conversation. I
Oh,
hope we
thank
can
you
do
so
this
much.
again. You were
Happy to
just
do it
lovely.
anytime. Oh, sure. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thank you.